I am Sierra, 32 years old and lead software architect at DataSphere Solutions. After 3 years building the backbone of our revolutionary platform with my brilliant team, I never expected to hear those words. Our new social media rock star needs the best office space, my boss announced, pointing toward the cramped annex by the service entrance. When they dismissed my concerns about technical requirements, I simply told my team, "Pack your bags." Nobody realized what would happen next. Before I dive into this wild corporate roller coaster, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe for more workplace reality checks. Technology has always been my sanctuary. As a child, I found refuge in the logical world of code when the chaos of real life became overwhelming. By 20, I had already completed my computer science degree and landed my first job at a major tech company. But the corporate ladder felt too rigid, too slow for someone with my drive. I wanted to build something revolutionary, to solve real problems with elegant solutions. That opportunity came when I joined DataSphere Solutions 4 years ago. We were small then, just 15 people crammed into an office that smelled perpetually of takeout and coffee. Our founder and CEO, Alexander Wilson, had this infectious vision about transforming how businesses process and analyze data. He talked about creating an ecosystem where complex data structures could be manipulated by anyone, not just technical specialists. "Sierra," he said during my interview, leaning forward with intensity in his eyes, "we need someone who can architect not just code but the future." His words resonated with me. I wanted to be that architect. Over the next year, I assembled my dream team. First came Madison Chen, a back-end developer whose code was so elegant it brought tears to my eyes. We had worked together at my previous company, and I knew her brilliance was matched only by her loyalty. When I called to recruit her, she didn't even let me finish my pitch before accepting. "Wherever you go, I go," she said simply. "Your projects are always the ones worth building." Wesley Thompson joined next, a database expert with an almost supernatural ability to optimize query performance. I had met him at a hackathon where he single-handedly outperformed teams of 4. It took 3 lunch meetings and a promise of complete database architecture control to lure him away from his cushy corporate job. Amanda Jackson came aboard as our UI/UX specialist, the rare designer who understood both aesthetic beauty and technical constraints. She had this uncanny ability to translate complex data visualizations into interfaces so intuitive that even the most technically challenged users could navigate them effortlessly. The final addition was Ethan Parker, a junior programmer fresh out of college. What he lacked in experience he made up for with raw talent, and an eagerness to learn that was almost palpable. I saw something of myself in him, that same hunger to prove himself in the tech world. Our workspace was perfect, strategically located near the server room, with dedicated high-speed lines and customized workstations we had carefully built to our specifications. We had whiteboards covering every available wall surface, covered in diagrams, code snippets, and the occasional inside joke. It was more than an office, it was our creative sanctuary where the magic happened. The project we were working on had the potential to catapult DataSphere from promising startup to industry leader. We called it Nexus, a data analysis platform that could process and visualize information at speeds competitors could only dream about. The architecture was revolutionary, using a distributed processing approach that I had been conceptualizing for years. "If we pull this off," I told my team during one of our late-night coding sessions, "we will change how businesses understand their data forever." The stakes became even higher when Alexander secured a meeting with Vertex Capital, a venture capital firm known for making or breaking tech startups. They were considering a $40 million investment, but first they wanted a live demonstration of our technology. We had 6 weeks to perfect Nexus before the big demo. "This is it," Alexander announced at our company meeting, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. "This is the moment that takes us from startup to success story." Little did I know that the path to that success story would take an unexpected and turbulent turn, one that would test not just our technical skills but our very worth within the company we had helped build. The arrival of Ryan Pierce was heralded with company-wide emails and a special announcement from Alexander. Our CEO described him as a digital marketing virtuoso and social media guru who would revolutionize our public image. Ryan had apparently built impressive social media followings for several consumer tech companies and Alexander was convinced he could do the same for our more specialized B2B products. I was actually optimistic about his arrival. Our team had created incredible technology, but we struggled to explain its value to non-technical people. A skilled marketing director could help translate our innovation into language that resonated with potential clients and investors. The day Ryan started, Alexander called an all-hands meeting to introduce him. Ryan stood confidently at the front of the room dressed in a perfectly tailored suit that made the rest of us in our casual tech wear look like we had just rolled out of bed. He was handsome in that polished Instagram-ready way with a dazzling smile and carefully styled hair. "I am so pumped to join the DataSphere family," Ryan announced, pacing the stage with the practiced ease of a TED Talk presenter. "I see unlimited potential for this brand. We are going to transform how the world sees data analysis. I am thinking viral videos, influencer partnerships, maybe even a podcast series called Data Decoded, where we make complex concepts accessible and sexy." Alexander nodded along enthusiastically, looking at Ryan like he had just discovered a unicorn. "Ryan is going to be the face of DataSphere," he declared. "While you brilliant minds create the technology, Ryan will make sure the world knows about it and wants it." I glanced at Madison, who raised an eyebrow slightly. We both recognized the value of good marketing, but something in Alexander's tone suggested that the company's priorities might be shifting. Over the next few weeks, Ryan became Alexander's shadow. They were constantly in meetings together, huddled over sleek presentations about brand identity and market positioning. I noticed Alexander spending less time checking in on our technical progress and more time discussing social media metrics. The first real warning sign came during a budget meeting when Alexander delayed approval on our request for additional development servers, but immediately greenlit Ryan's proposal for an expensive video production setup. "The servers can wait another quarter," Alexander said dismissively. "We need to start building our online presence now if we want to maximize the impact of the Nexus launch." I bit my tongue, reminding myself that Alexander had built a successful company and must have a broader vision than I could see. But a knot of unease began to form in my stomach. Then came the morning that changed everything. I was at my desk reviewing some code when Alexander appeared at our door with Ryan in tow. They seemed to be in the middle of a conversation, and neither acknowledged me as they surveyed our workspace. "This is perfect," Ryan was saying, gesturing around our office. "High ceilings, natural light, enough space for the content creation team I am building. We could put the podcast booth in that corner, maybe a small green screen setup over there." "What about the engineering team?" Alexander asked, finally glancing in my direction. Ryan waved his hand dismissively. "They can work from anywhere, right? All they need are computers. My team needs a creative space to thrive." I stood up, no longer able to pretend I wasn't hearing this conversation about my team's workspace. "Excuse me, but we specifically designed this space for our technical needs. We are hardwired to the server room from here, and our equipment setup is customized for the work we do." Alexander looked momentarily uncomfortable, but Ryan jumped in smoothly. "I completely respect the amazing work your team does, Sierra, but marketing is a visual business. When investors and clients visit, they need to see a dynamic, creative environment that reflects our brand values. Our brand is built on technological innovation," I countered, feeling my face flush. "And this space is crucial for that innovation to continue." Alexander cleared his throat. "Sierra, I need to see you in my office in an hour. We have some logistical changes to discuss." That hour was one of the longest in my professional life. I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept spinning through possible outcomes, none of them good. When I finally walked into Alexander's office, I found Ryan already there displaying mock-ups of what appeared to be our office space transformed into a sleek marketing headquarters complete with a juice bar and lounge area. Sierra, Alexander began, not quite meeting my eyes. "DataSphere is evolving. As we prepare to scale with the Nexus launch, we need to consider our image carefully. Our image should be built on our technical excellence," I said quietly. "Of course, and your team is integral to that." Alexander nodded. "But Ryan has helped me see that we also need to project creativity and cutting-edge thinking in how we present ourselves." Ryan smiled broadly. "Think of it this way, Sierra. Your team builds the engine, but my team builds the beautiful car that makes people want to buy it. Here is the plan." Alexander continued, sliding a floor plan across his desk. Your team will relocate to the annex space by the service entrance. It has been renovated recently, and information technology can run whatever cables you need. I stared at the floor plan in disbelief. The annex was a glorified storage space with no windows and poor ventilation. It was also on the opposite side of the building from the server room, which would create significant technical challenges. Alexander, this won't work for us, I said firmly. The distance from the servers alone will create latency issues. Not to mention the space is too small for our equipment and team to function effectively. We will make it work, Alexander said, his tone making it clear this wasn't up for debate. Ryan's social media team is expanding, and they need a space that inspires creativity. The juice bar is non-negotiable. It is part of the culture shift we are implementing. I took a deep breath, trying to control my mounting frustration. Our technical requirements aren't about preferences or comfort. They directly impact our ability to deliver the product you are about to promise to investors. Alexander's expression hardened. I expect you to be a team player, Sierra. Change is part of growth. Your team will move next week, and I need you to make this transition smooth. That is what leaders do. As I left the office, Ryan called after me. I think you will find the new space has its own charm. Maybe we can get you a small juice station too. It took every ounce of professionalism I had not to respond to that patronizing offer. Instead, I walked back to our soon-to-be former office, trying to figure out how to break the news to my team that our workspace was being sacrificed for a juice bar. The annex was worse than I had imagined. As we stood in the doorway that Monday morning carrying boxes of our personal items, the reality of our new workspace hit us like a physical blow. The room was long and narrow, with a low ceiling dotted with flickering fluorescent lights that emitted an incessant, barely audible hum. The walls were a dingy beige that no amount of motivational posters could brighten. Well, this island, Cozy Madison said, trying to inject some optimism into the moment. Ethan looked around with wide eyes. Where are we supposed to put the testing servers? It was a valid question. Our old space had been configured with proper ventilation and power requirements for our development environment. This room had clearly been designed for storage, not technological innovation. The first week was a nightmare of practical problems. The service entrance meant delivery trucks would idle just outside our only source of fresh air, filling our workspace with exhaust fumes. The room temperature fluctuated wildly, sometimes becoming so hot that our equipment would overheat and shut down, other times so cold that we worked with coats and gloves on. Space was our biggest immediate challenge. Our workstations, which had been arranged in a collaborative configuration in our old office, now had to be lined up in two tight rows. There was barely enough room to pull out our chairs without bumping into each other. The whiteboards we relied on for collaborative problem-solving had to be stacked against one wall, making them difficult to use effectively. But the technical issues proved even more problematic. Being on the opposite side of the building from the server room meant our direct connections were gone. Information technology had run new cables as promised, but the distance created latency issues that made real-time testing frustratingly slow. The authentication lag is getting worse, Wesley reported after running diagnostics during our second week in the new space. When we try to access the main database, there is a 3-second delay that wasn't there before. 3 seconds might not sound like much, I explained to the team, but when you are processing millions of data points in real time, those seconds compound into minutes or hours of additional processing time. Madison discovered another critical issue. The master access key for the system security protocols is hardwired to the Ethernet port in our old office, she said, looking up from her laptop with concern. It was a security measure we implemented last year, remember? The authentication only works through that physical connection. I remembered it well. We had designed the system with multiple layers of security, including a master key that required a physical connection to a specific port. It was an elegant solution to prevent remote hacking, but now it presented a serious problem. Can we move it? Ethan asked. Wesley shook his head. Not without completely reconfiguring the security architecture. That would take weeks, maybe months of work. And we have the investor demo in 3 weeks, Amanda reminded us. I documented all these issues meticulously and requested an urgent meeting with Alexander. When he finally agreed to see me 2 days later, I brought detailed reports and diagrams illustrating the technical challenges we were facing. These are not just inconveniences. I explained, spreading the documents across his desk. The physical location of our team has created serious technical constraints that threaten the functionality of Nexus. Alexander barely glanced at my documentation. Every department deals with challenges during growth periods. I need solutions, not complaints. I am giving you solutions, I insisted, pointing to my proposals. We either need to move back to our original space or invest significant resources in rebuilding our infrastructure. The marketing department is already settled in your old space, Alexander said dismissively. Ryan has already started recording podcasts and creating content. The juice bar installation begins tomorrow. A juice bar, I repeated flatly, while the core product that this company is built on is compromised. Alexander's expression hardened. I think you are being dramatic, Sierra. Figure it out. That is what I pay you for. With no support from Alexander, I tried going through proper channels. I scheduled a meeting with Charlotte from Human Resources, hoping she might help advocate for better working conditions. Charlotte was sympathetic as I explained the situation. That sounds extremely challenging, she agreed, making notes as I spoke. I can definitely see how these conditions would impact your team's productivity and morale. It is not just about morale, I emphasized. There are real technical limitations that affect our ability to deliver the product. Charlotte nodded thoughtfully. I understand. Let me talk to Alexander and see what accommodations might be possible. But a week later, Charlotte informed me apologetically that while she had raised my concerns, no changes would be made before the investor demonstration. Alexander feels that any disruption now would send the wrong message to the team, she explained, not quite meeting my eyes. Meanwhile, Ryan's social media empire continued to expand. Through the company grapevine, I heard he had hired 5 new team members and was interviewing for 3 more positions. When I passed by our old office, now unrecognizable with its sleek furniture and vibrant decor, I could see the promised juice bar being installed, a gleaming monument to misplaced priorities. I documented everything methodically, sending formal emails, warning about the potential system vulnerabilities and performance issues. Each one was acknowledged with a brief thanks for the update, or simply ignored. The company culture was shifting palpably. All hands meetings became showcases for Ryan's latest marketing campaigns rather than updates on our product development. The once collaborative atmosphere had transformed into a hierarchy where the creative departments were clearly favored over the technical teams. As the investor demonstration approached, my team worked increasingly long hours trying to create workarounds for our technical limitations. Madison and Wesley developed a temporary authentication relay that might mitigate some of the security issues, but it was an imperfect solution at best. This is unsustainable, Madison told me one night as we worked late, the only ones left in the office. We are building digital duct tape solutions for problems that shouldn't exist. I nodded tiredly. I know. But what choice do we have? We always have choices, she replied, giving me a meaningful look. Sometimes we just do not want to face them. Her words stayed with me as I drove home that night. We did have choices, but they all seemed to involve uncomfortable confrontations or potentially career-damaging moves. Yet as I thought about the master access key issue and how it might affect the investor demo, I realized we were rapidly approaching a point where something would have to give. The breaking point came 3 days before the demonstration when we ran a full system test and encountered cascading failures. The authentication relay we had built crashed under the load, and we could not access critical system components remotely. The only way this works, Wesley said after hours of troubleshooting, is if we physically connect through the original Ethernet port. The master access key won't authenticate any other way. We all understood what that meant. Without access to our old office, we could not guarantee the system would function during the demonstration. All our warnings had come to fruition, and now we faced a potential disaster that could cost the company its future. That night I made a decision. It was time to stop trying to accommodate an impossible situation and make Alexander understand the real costs of his choices. I called an emergency team meeting the next morning. We gathered in our cramped annex, expressions grim after the failed system test. Everyone knew what was at stake, both for the company and for our professional reputations. We need to talk about our options. I began closing the door to ensure privacy. The investor demonstration is in 2 days, and we have a critical technical issue that threatens its success. Madison leaned forward, arms crossed on the table. Let's be honest, Sierra. We have been sending warnings for weeks. They have been ignored. At this point, our options are limited. We could quit, Ethan suggested, his young face unusually serious. All find new jobs. There are plenty of companies that would value what we do. That feels like abandoning ship, Amanda countered. We built Nexus. It is our baby. Wesley shook his head. This isn't about the technology anymore. It is about respect. About understanding that technical requirements aren't optional preferences. His words struck a chord with me. This wasn't just about an office relocation or a juice bar. It was about a fundamental disconnect in how our work was valued within the company. Here is what I see, I said slowly, the path forward becoming clearer as I spoke. We have leverage. Nexus doesn't work without us. But we also have responsibility to ourselves and to the company we helped build. So what are you suggesting? Madison asked. One final attempt to make Alexander understand the reality of the situation, I replied. I will request an urgent meeting with him today. I will lay out exactly what will happen during the demonstration if we can't access the master key through the original port. And if he dismisses you again, Wesley pressed. I took a deep breath. Then we do our jobs exactly as defined, no more and no less. We attend the demonstration as required. We follow instructions. But we don't perform miracles. You mean we don't go above and beyond to fix problems they created? Madison clarified, a hint of a smile playing at her lips. Exactly. We have been working nights and weekends trying to compensate for decisions made against our advice. Maybe it is time to let the consequences of those decisions become visible. The team exchanged glances, weighing the implications. This wasn't about sabotage, it was about boundaries. About no longer obscuring problems with heroic efforts. I am in Madison, said firmly. One by one, the others nodded their agreement. I managed to secure a meeting with Alexander that afternoon. He looked irritated when I entered his office, glancing pointedly at his watch. This needs to be quick, Sierra. I have a planning session with Ryan for the investor presentation. That is exactly what I need to discuss, I said, taking a seat without waiting for an invitation. We have a critical issue that will affect the demonstration. I explained the master access key problem in clear non-technical terms, emphasizing that this was not a new issue, but one we had been warning about since the relocation. The bottom line is that without access to the original Ethernet port in our old office, we cannot guarantee the system will function during the demonstration, I concluded. Alexander leaned back in his chair, studying me with narrowed eyes. Is this some kind of power play, Sierra? Because I don't appreciate ultimatums. This isn't an ultimatum, it is a technical reality, I replied evenly. I have documented every step of this process. Every warning, every proposed solution, every response. And what exactly are you asking for? He demanded. Either temporary access to our old office for the demonstration or an acknowledgement to the investors that certain features may not be available due to infrastructure changes. Alexander's face flushed with anger. Absolutely not. You will make this work, Sierra. That is what I pay you for. Figure it out. I stood up, remarkably calm despite the tension crackling in the air. I understand your position. Then I should inform you that my team will be following standard protocols during the demonstration. We will not be implementing any of the temporary workarounds we have been using internally, as they have not been properly tested or approved. What does that mean? Alexander demanded. It means we will pack our bags, so to speak. No unofficial solutions, no heroic measures, just the documented approved systems as they currently exist. Alexander seemed to relax, misinterpreting my words. Good. That is what I expect. A professional presentation of our capabilities. Exactly, I agreed, heading for the door. Our actual current capabilities. Back in the annex, I gathered my team to explain the outcome of the meeting. He didn't listen, I told them, unsurprised, but still disappointed. So we proceed with the plan, Wesley asked. I nodded. We document everything meticulously. We prepare for the demonstration according to official protocols. No unapproved workarounds, no last-minute fixes. What about the ethical considerations? Amanda asked, voicing what we were all thinking. Are we deliberately setting up the company to fail? No, I said firmly. We are allowing reality to become visible. There is a difference. We have done everything possible to prevent this situation, and our warnings have been ignored. Now we need to establish clear boundaries around our work. We spent the next 2 days preparing extensive documentation of all the issues, our proposed solutions, and the responses we had received. We created a timeline of events and technical analyses of the specific problems. I made sure every team member had copies of these documents. Remember, I told them as we left the office the night before the demonstration tomorrow, we are professionals doing our jobs as officially defined, nothing more, nothing less. As I drove home that evening, I felt a strange mix of dread and relief. Tomorrow would change the course of DataSphere one way or another. I just hoped that whatever happened, it would lead to a healthier environment where technical expertise was valued alongside marketing flash. The morning of the demonstration arrived with a buzz of nervous energy throughout the office. Vertex Capital was sending 5 representatives, including their lead tech investor Brian Hamilton, known for his sharp questions and no-nonsense approach. A $40 million investment hung in the balance, enough funding to fuel our growth for years if everything went well. I arrived early with my team, all of us dressed more formally than usual. We set up in the main conference room, connecting our equipment and running basic system checks. Everything functioned at a surface level enough to show the interface and basic features, but we all knew the deeper functionality requiring the master access key would fail. Ryan bustled in an hour before the presentation, directing a small team that transformed the conference room with professional lighting, branded tablecloths, and elegant refreshment stations. He barely acknowledged us as they worked, focused entirely on the aesthetic experience. "Make sure those demo tablets are wiped clean of fingerprints," he instructed an assistant. "First impressions matter." Alexander arrived next, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. He surveyed the room with satisfaction, nodding appreciatively at the marketing touches. "Everything ready on the technical side?" He asked me, more a formality than a genuine question. "The system is set up according to our current infrastructure capabilities," I replied carefully. He frowned slightly at my precise wording, but was quickly distracted by Ryan calling him over to review some presentation slides. The investors arrived exactly on time, a group of serious-looking professionals led by Brian Hamilton, whose reputation for technical knowledge made him particularly dangerous to our charade. Alexander greeted them warmly, leading them to the prepared seating area. "Welcome to DataSphere Solutions," he began, his voice brimming with confidence. "Today, you will see the future of data analysis technology, a platform that will revolutionize how businesses understand and leverage their information assets." Ryan took over with a slick marketing presentation complete with animated graphics and carefully crafted messaging. He spoke about market potential, competitive advantages, and growth projections, never once touching on the actual technical reality of our product. "Our social media presence has grown 300% in just 2 months, Ryan announced, proudly displaying charts of follower counts and engagement metrics. "The market is already responding to our brand positioning." The investors nodded politely, but I could see Brian Hamilton checking his watch. He hadn't come for a marketing pitch, he wanted to see technology. Finally, Alexander moved to the main event. "Now, let me show you what makes DataSphere truly revolutionary. Our Nexus platform represents a quantum leap in data processing capabilities." He gestured to Thomas, the junior engineer who had been designated to run the demonstration. Thomas stepped forward nervously, taking control of the main presentation screen. "I will start by showing you our real-time data processing capabilities." Thomas began, his voice steady despite the pressure. "This interface allows users to visualize complex data relationships instantly." He began the login sequence, entering his credentials into the sleek interface. The system accepted his username and password, then moved to the secondary authentication, which required validation through the master access key. We all watched as the loading icon spun on the screen, seconds ticking by in uncomfortable silence. After 30 seconds, an error message appeared. "Authentication failed. Please check your connection and try again." Thomas tried again, his fingers moving quickly across the keyboard. The same error appeared. Alexander laughed nervously. Technical glitches always happening at the worst moments. "Let's move to our backup system." Thomas switched to the secondary demonstration device we had set up, but the result was the same. The authentication failed without the physical connection to the master access port. Brian Hamilton leaned forward, eyes narrowed. Is there a problem with the core functionality? Not at all, Alexander assured him quickly. Just a minor connectivity issue. Thomas, increasingly flustered, tried a third approach, attempting to bypass the authentication altogether. He leaned toward Alexander and whispered something, his expression panicked. Alexander's face paled visibly. What do you mean hardwired? He hissed. Sir Thomas whispered loud enough that those closest could hear the master access key was hardwired to the Ethernet port in their old office. We can't authenticate without it. Alexander's eyes shot to me, a mix of fury and desperation in his gaze. The other investors were shifting uncomfortably, exchanging concerned glances. Perhaps Miss Rivera can explain the technical limitation we're encountering. Brian suggested, turning his attention to me. All eyes in the room turned to me. This was the moment of truth, the consequence of decisions made despite our warnings. I stood up, calmly professional to the core. Yes, I can explain. Our authentication system includes a security feature that requires physical connection to a specific network port. This feature was implemented last year as part of our robust security architecture. And why isn't it working today? Brian pressed. Our development team was relocated to a different part of the building 3 weeks ago, I explained evenly. The master access port remains in our former workspace, which has been repurposed for the marketing department. Alexander interrupted. This is just a temporary glitch that can be easily resolved. Actually, I continued, we documented this issue when the relocation was first proposed. We submitted formal warnings about this specific authentication problem and proposed several solutions. I slid a folder across the table to Brian. This contains our complete documentation, including timestamps of when these warnings were submitted and the responses received. Brian opened the folder, scanning the contents with a practiced eye. The other investors leaned in, their expressions growing more serious as they grasped the situation. So to be clear, Brian said, looking up from the documents, your team identified this problem weeks ago, proposed solutions, and those warnings were ignored. We were told to figure it out, I replied using Alexander's exact words. The atmosphere in the room had shifted dramatically. What had begun as a showcase of innovation had transformed into a case study of mismanagement. Alexander attempted to regain control. This is simply a miscommunication between departments. The functionality of the product itself is sound. But we can't actually see that functionality today, can we? Brian pointed out, which raises questions about project management and corporate priorities. Ryan jumped in with a desperate attempt to redirect. Our market research indicates overwhelming interest in the concept. We have influencers lined up to promote the launch. Brian closed the folder deliberately. Mr. Wilson, I think we need to have a different kind of conversation than the one we planned. Would it be possible to speak privately with Miss Rivera and her technical team? Alexander's face cycled through shock, anger, and finally resignation. Of course, he managed to say. We want you to have a complete understanding of our operation. As Alexander and Ryan left the room, the weight of what had just happened settled over us. This wasn't a victory to celebrate. It was the inevitable collision of reality with wishful thinking. The company's future hung in the balance, and we were now in the position of explaining to potential investors just how badly things had gone off track. The private meeting with the investors lasted over 2 hours. Brian Hamilton, to his credit, asked detailed, insightful questions about both the technology and the organizational issues we had encountered. I presented our documentation, chronologically explaining each warning we had issued and the responses or lack thereof we had received. What strikes me, Brian said as he reviewed our material, is not just that these warnings were ignored, but that there seems to be a fundamental misalignment of values within the company. The core product that justifies a $40 million investment was essentially sacrificed for aesthetic considerations. Madison spoke up, always the most direct of our team. We believe in the technology we're building. Nexus has the potential to transform how businesses process data, but that potential can only be realized in an environment that values technical excellence. And you don't believe the current leadership provides that environment? Another investor asked. I chose my words carefully. Alexander built this company from nothing, and his vision brought us all together. But recently, priorities have shifted in ways that compromise our ability to deliver on that vision. Brian nodded thoughtfully. Would you be willing to show us the actual working conditions your team has been operating under? We led the investors to our annex workspace. Their expressions as they entered the cramped, poorly ventilated room told the story better than any words could have. The contrast with the sleek, spacious marketing department visible through the glass walls of our former office was stark and damning. And this is where you're expected to develop cutting-edge technology? Brian asked, looking genuinely disturbed. Yes, I confirmed. While our former workspace was converted to this, I gestured toward the marketing department where the gleaming juice bar stood as a monument to misplaced priorities. As we walked back to the conference room, Brian fell into step beside me. Sierra, I appreciate your candor today. It can't have been easy to speak so honestly about these issues. I believe in truth in business, I replied. Hiding problems doesn't solve them. It just postpones the inevitable and makes the eventual fallout worse. I agree, he said, and I suspect we'll be having some very frank conversations with Mr. Wilson about the future of DataSphere. After the investors left, Alexander summoned me to his office. His face was thunderous as I entered, closing the door behind me. What the hell was that? He demanded, barely containing his fury. You deliberately sabotaged the demonstration. I did exactly what I said I would do, I replied calmly. I followed protocols and spoke truthfully when asked direct questions. You made me look like a fool in front of Vertex Capital. Do you have any idea what you've done? I think I've made the real situation visible, I said. The question is, what will you do now that reality can't be ignored? Alexander paced behind his desk, running his hands through his hair in frustration. They're calling an emergency meeting with our board tomorrow. They're reconsidering the entire investment. That's not surprising. Is that all you have to say? He demanded. This company might collapse because of what happened today. I leaned forward, meeting his gaze steadily. This company was already at risk because of decisions that prioritized appearance over substance. Today just made that risk visible. Alexander stared at me for a long moment. I could fire you for this. You could, I acknowledged, but I don't think that would help your position with Vertex Capital or the board. He sank into his chair, the anger seemingly draining out of him. How did we get here, Sierra? This isn't what I wanted. I know, I said, softening slightly. You got caught up in the idea of what the company could look like rather than focusing on what it actually does. Ryan presented a compelling vision, but it was a vision without substance. The board meeting the next day was intense. I was asked to present the technical team's perspective, which I did factually and without embellishment. Ryan attempted to defend the marketing priorities but found little sympathy among board members who had just watched a $40 million investment opportunity implode. The outcome was decisive. The board, influenced strongly by concerns raised by Vertex Capital, voted to restructure the company leadership. Alexander would step back from day-to-day operations, serving instead as chairman of the board. A search would begin for a new CEO with a stronger technical background. Most surprisingly, Brian Hamilton approached me after the meeting. Vertex is still interested in investing in DataSphere, he told me. But we want to see changes in how the company operates and what it prioritizes. What kind of changes? I asked. We'd like to see the technical team restored to appropriate working conditions, for one thing, he said. And we'd like you to lead technical operations with a direct reporting line to the board until a new CEO is appointed. The proposal was unexpected but made sense. Vertex wanted to protect their potential investment by ensuring the core technology received the support it needed. When I informed my team about the restructuring, their reactions were mixed. Relief that our concerns had finally been heard, but also concern about the upheaval ahead. What about Ryan and the marketing team? Ethan asked. Their role will be recalibrated, I explained. Marketing is still important, but it needs to accurately reflect our actual capabilities rather than drive company direction. Over the next few weeks, changes rippled through DataSphere. We moved back to our original workspace, reclaiming the environment we needed to function effectively. The juice bar remained as a small reminder of the misplaced priorities that had nearly tanked the company. Ryan's team was downsized but not eliminated. He still had a role to play, but it was now clearly in service to the technical vision rather than competing with it. To his credit, after the initial shock wore off, Ryan adapted to the new reality with surprising grace. I think I got caught up in the excitement of creating an image, he admitted to me one day, as we discussed marketing plans for the actual capabilities of Nexus. It was more fun to imagine what could be than to understand what actually was. Alexander struggled more with the transition. Having to step back from the company he founded was painful, and our relationship remained strained. But even he gradually came to recognize that the restructuring had saved Datasphere rather than damaged it. Vertex Capital eventually did invest, though, at a more modest $25 million, rather than the originally discussed $40 million. They wanted to see proven execution under the new structure before committing fully. As for me, the experience changed how I viewed my role and responsibilities. I had always focused on the technical aspects of my job, avoiding the messier human and organizational elements. But I now understood that technical excellence couldn't exist in isolation from the organizational culture that supported it. 6 months after the fateful investor demonstration, Datasphere Solutions had transformed. Our headquarters now reflected a balanced approach between technical excellence and marketing appeal. My team occupied an expanded version of our original workspace, with upgraded infrastructure that properly supported our development needs. Ryan's downsized but focused marketing team operated from a still stylish but more appropriately sized office across the hall. The juice bar remained, but it had been moved to the common area where everyone could enjoy it. A small symbol of our new organizational philosophy: amenities should serve everyone, not create hierarchies. With proper technical foundations in place, we successfully launched Nexus to market. The platform quickly gained traction among data analysts and business intelligence professionals who appreciated its powerful capabilities and intuitive interface. The early adopters became evangelists, creating the authentic word-of-mouth marketing that no amount of social media influence could manufacture. Vertex Capital had released the first installment of their investment with milestones in place for the remainder. Their trust had been earned through consistent delivery on promises and transparent communication about both capabilities and limitations. Alexander had settled into his role as chairman, finding a new purpose in strategic networking rather than day-to-day management. A new CEO, Patricia Lawson, had been appointed, bringing valuable experience from larger tech companies and a deep appreciation for balancing technical and marketing priorities. My relationship with Ryan had evolved into something I never expected: genuine collaboration. Once the pressure to be the face of the company was removed, his actual marketing skills proved valuable when properly aligned with our real capabilities. I was thinking about how to explain the distributed processing feature to non-technical users, he said during one of our weekly coordination meetings. What if we create a simple animation that shows data flowing through the system? No hype, just clarity. That would be genuinely useful, I agreed. Our users often struggle to visualize what's happening behind the interface. These small moments of alignment between technical reality and marketing communication had become regular occurrences, each one healing a bit more of the division that had nearly destroyed the company. One afternoon, I found myself alone with Alexander in the break room. Our interactions had been minimal and formal since the restructuring, but something in his expression suggested he wanted to talk. The Q2 numbers look good, he offered, a peace offering of sorts. They do, I agreed. The enterprise client segment is growing faster than projected. He nodded, staring into his coffee cup. I've been reflecting on what happened, Sierra. I made mistakes. We all did, I said, surprising myself with the admission. I could have found better ways to make you understand the technical issues we were facing. No, he said firmly. This one's on me. I got seduced by the idea of being a cutting-edge tech company without doing the hard work of actually building cutting-edge technology. Ryan showed me what we could look like, and I lost sight of what we actually were. His humility was unexpected but welcome. The important thing is that we recovered, I said. Many companies wouldn't have. Because of you, he acknowledged. You forced reality into the open when I was trying to hide from it. That took courage. The conversation marked a turning point in our professional relationship. Not a return to what it had been before, but the beginning of something new, based on hard-won mutual respect. The experience changed me profoundly, both professionally and personally. I had always defined myself purely through technical achievement, avoiding the messier aspects of organizational politics. But I now understood that being a true leader meant engaging with those challenges, not just writing code or designing systems. More importantly, I learned that standing up for your team and your principles isn't career suicide, even when it feels like you're risking everything. There's power in expertise confidently expressed in boundaries firmly maintained. The tech industry is full of companies chasing image over substance, prioritizing marketing flash over technical excellence. Many of them eventually crash when reality catches up with their promises. Datasphere had come perilously close to that fate but found a different path just in time. For any of you watching who work in technical roles, remember that your expertise has value that deserves respect. Document everything, communicate clearly, and when necessary, have the courage to let reality become visible rather than enabling dysfunction through heroic efforts. And for those in leadership positions, remember that no amount of marketing can compensate for a product that doesn't work. Build your company's image on the foundation of what you actually do well, not what you wish you could do. The journey continues for me and my team at Datasphere. We're building something real, something valuable, something that makes a difference for our users. And at the end of the day, that matters more than any juice bar ever could. Have you ever had to stand up for your expertise when others didn't understand its value? Or have you witnessed priorities getting dangerously misaligned in your workplace? Share your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more workplace reality checks. And remember, in the battle between substance and flash, substance might take longer to build, but it's what endures. Thank you for listening to my story.